Go.
Okay, go. Well, so we have to trace back where we were in the conversation, right? We were talking about.
What I said at the start is this is a group of people. The thing they have in common is they kind of met during the anti-SJW days of YouTube. We all consider ourselves liberal, left from center, social democrat. We are disillusioned how several people who we used to associate with or watched went further and further to the right. But we also don't want to join LeftTube or left-wing YouTube or whatever it is called now, as many of our former associates now do.
I should say, for the record, though, I don't consider myself a social democrat. I'm more with the on the libertarian side, though, continental, though, so not the American, but still firmly liberal.
I don't know what the continental libertarian.
It's basically Crowd would know it as the FDP a bit. Part of it was also with the neoliberals, but there's the liberal Democrats, Lib Dems. But it doesn't matter for this. But you made the what you didn't record, or what you did record, but you had to start recording again. You were of the opinion that one can make a liberal case for or against the EU, right?
Ansgar brought up that in his opinion, the falling out between Sargon and Thunderfoot was one of the big things that led to the breakup of this sphere of the internet. And I should reiterate this for everyone who's listening to this for whatever reason you may or may not be. We want to look back at the years of content that we created in this community and determine what went wrong. And Ansgar, correct me if I'm interpreting you wrong, you think the falling out between Thunderfoot and Sargon was one of the big starting points where stuff went wrong?
I think that was like the first shot across the bow. I don't know if that was what led to a lot of things, or if that was medium of what was to come. You know what I mean? I'm not really sure. I think major catalysts to it, to be quite honest, was Trump. I mean, when Trump came around, you could see where, most of a huge portion of the, let's say the anti-SJW YouTube was very much like, whoa, this guy's a moron and a lunatic. What the hell? And then you had people on like the Sargon side saying, oh, well, he's pissing off all the right people. Who cares that he's a moron? It'll defeat the SJWs. So, vote for him because it'll defeat the SJWs. And I think some of us with a bit more principles went, no, you don't vote for a dangerous moron because you want the SJWs.
At the same time, though, I think there was still a rather broad agreement, though, that it was but correct me if I'm wrong, but I had the impression of after the Trump election, what I got from the reactions, there was still an agreement on this Trump election is the product of the failures of the American left, and not least of all the SJWs. But that was still an assessment that was not unanimous in the quote-unquote community, but that still was pretty pervasive. Sure. With whether or not the people supported Trump, for the record, right? But because I remember you, Crowd, you never said anything in support of Trump.
That's a different thing. That's a completely different thing. That's separate from everything. Which is, I just have a rule on my YouTube channels. I will never tell people who to vote, and I will never endorse.
I know that too. But regardless of but I think you actually summed it up pretty well when you said directed at the American lefties and the then intersectionals, SJWs, whatever you want to call them. They deserve this. They really they fucked this one up pretty massively. The neoliberals too, like the corporate Democrats with Hillary Clinton, right? That was the unholy
that's also more of a general attitude I have, because a lot of people always whine about democracy, that it's like the wrong people in charge, no. But I have an understanding of democracy that you don't just get the government who you vote for, but you also get the government which you deserve. Which is a bit of a cynical way of seeing it.
It's very much. It's almost like you could almost insert that into the movie, right?
I by the way have to tell you that I believe that the origins of why things went wrong are far, far further behind.
I was going to say something similar, but let's
I believe
you go first.
I believe it's the response video format.
Yeah, that's
you're not wrong there. I would say the big problem that people had, and the response video format as well as the falling out with Sargon and Thunderfoot, what symptoms of this, but or maybe they're all just symptoms of a larger problem. This community, because it was also called the anti-SJW community, and the problem is if you just stand against something, what do you actually stand for, right? And people were like, oh yeah, we're classical liberals and yada yada yada, but if you just do the response format, right? Like what's the message you're actually putting across? Like I think you said that once, Carl. Yeah, you can only say feminism is doo-doo so many times.
It's not
ultimately that paved the way for the paranoia pornographers.
It's not just
because
that's
what people were
bar.
watching.
It lowered the bar of content.
Yeah,
like the initial response videos, like in preparations for these streams, I went back to 2008 and watched like the first Thunderfoot videos. Like I watched the first response videos made not just by Thunderfoot but by Potholder, by Aaron Ra, by all these people, and I watched these and I compared them to what is classified as a response video today, and it's a difference like night and day. It's like you have in the old ones you have citations, you have very reasoned arguments, you have some of that arrogance, you know, that pawned old attitude and blah 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 blah, but it is backed up with something.
Oh yeah, it was also the. I think it was almost. I think, and that arrogance, I think, was also the arrogance of someone who dared challenge an orthodoxy. Because I think back then, you also need to look at the internet looked very different, right? Like I think we often forget that there was a presence even online for the feminist intersectional SJWs, whatever you want to call them, and that got decimated pretty good.
Oh, I actually looked at like when this started. Like I was really interested in figuring out where this started, the SJW stuff. And the earliest I could find in the atheist community on YouTube was, I think it was around 2011 or 2010 when this first appeared. It was people making really... That's a point that I would like to make in a later conversation, which is one of the reasons I believe why far-left YouTube is now so popular is because the crazies are gone. If you go back a few years, you find so many crazies.
Oh, yeah.
Just so many crazies. And without the crazies,
One of the big differences between those early videos from people like Thunderfoot is they were addressing true leaders among the communities, right? They were addressing people that were popular, people that were, had very large platforms and large voices. And so they really did represent, if not the majority of thought, they did represent
an orthodoxy.
Yeah, some sort of an orthodoxy. By the end of the, anti-SJW response video, craze, they were just responding to any random nut they could find on the internet and then presenting it as this is an orthodoxy of thought. No,
exactly.
Some random nut you found.
And that's how it further degraded into this, let me make a video telling a teenage girl while she's wrong. So someone with an audience of 20 people. That's how it came to this.
Although we have to be fair, that were really just the low-end grifters, right? But I see where this is also coming from, and at the same time, the crazies were gone, and the people were doing their. They were reorganizing. Let's just put it that way, and I mean it almost positively because they were cleaning their house. Ultimately, they were.
I'm not necessarily sure if they were cleaning their house. Like I watched some of the really old response videos from like those days, and you had people there who there was this guy who Thunderfoot was responding to, who made a video rambling and ranting about how Thunderfoot needs to be replaced with a black scientist, and it's just craziness, pure insanity, just absolute nonsensical rambling. But and I would like to reiterate this point, and maybe even later make a video about it. The crazies are now on our side. Not our side, not because I left that group, and so did most of us, but that kind of crazy, rambling formatting, it devolved and became part of what we do. It's like, I think the best example is Anita Sarkeesian. If you look at her first videos, these inane, insane, stupid ramblings where she talks about butt sizes in video games. It's just, what the
strategic butt cutting rings? Was it that?
Yeah, she made a video where she compared the sizes of butts of various video game characters.
I think let's be careful. I think it was not just size, it was also the prominence and how it was covered or not. And I think I kept laughing
you know
at
what
that.
I mean, where she films herself dragging a half-naked dead woman around, which is something.
That too. I think that was with the Hitman. That was violence against women. That was something different.
Something that you can do, but you don't have to do, and it's actually.
I know, misrepresenting the game.
Yeah. And this like little nitpicky stuff. And the point
let me
get to that, because that
not only do you not have to do that, the game actually
disincentivizes it.
Yeah, but we're getting besides the point. The point I want to make is that kind of nitpicky, stupid, inane jibber jabber is what we started doing.
Oh yeah, creating your own controversy. Like fabricating an opinion. She's did it academically.
Yeah, why does this cartoon have no tits? The quartering example. Look at YouTube to now. Look at what we became. We became the pop culture critics. Like, I despise pop culture.
You're not entirely wrong about that. Oh God, yeah.
Well, and it opened the door for people like Black Pigeon Speaks and shit like that, where that's even like the quartering I consider pretty inane. Like, okay, so he bitches about shit on YouTube. Most of it, it's kind of like, I've got a new perspective. Like did we really need to respond to Anita Sarkeesian? No, we didn't. Like, as much as she was stupid, like,
I think we did. I think that was very important.
I think had we just not said a thing, she wouldn't have been the controversial figure. We wouldn't have given her any.
Oh yeah.
We gave her all the oxygen.
That too, but I think there was a feedback loop too, because I think, but maybe I'm wrong here, and this is just something I've been watching. But I think we shouldn't underestimate the mobilization effect that this ultimately had for the skeptics.
We have to keep in mind that there was craziness going on back then. When you were literally told you shouldn't make YouTube videos because you're white and a man, and all that madness that was going on, and this had been going on the internet since about 2010, and then at around like 2011 it first boiled up, then it simmered down again, and then in 2014 it exploded.
It fucking exploded, yeah. And I think it was pretty. But I could be wrong. I think it was important that, and it was just a chance of the outrage was going to go somewhere, right? And I think the galvanizing of it in a way of the gaming through a gaming lens actually made perfect sense, especially because like Anita's real quote unquote offense was that she wasn't a gamer, that she was an outsider, right? And I think that made it an almost symbolic case. And in the end, easy to understand, easy example of, look at these people, right? They don't even, it's not even their hobby, they're not even interested in it, but they are interested in it as a medium. And I think it was a wake-up call, because a lot of, and YouTube is a mostly male demographic, so a lot of young people, young males, gaming, right? It's gaming a big thing. And I think this politicized a lot of people, because that was the first time that a lot of people realized politics is going to come to you, even if you're not interested in it.
Well, in a lot of ways, what ended up happening was the whole, anti-gamer kind of sentiment came in and basically said, listen, if you're a gamer, you need to be politically active, and here's why. And it it activated a lot of gamers as political. It just didn't activate them the way they had expected.
It was the exact opposite, because they came in expecting to guilt trip them, and to have them bow down, and quite the opposite happened. I think it was actually overshot in the other direction. What I really find sad is anyone of you familiar with Liana Kursner's video, or Liana K on YouTube?
Nope.
I actually found her because Sargon used to actually talk with some interesting people, and I found it interesting that some of the most interesting people that Sargon talked to were women. You remember? Has anyone ever seen that?
I think I do remember
talk.
But it rings a bell.
So one of the two people that he talked to way back then, I don't know in what year that was, I would have to look it up, one of them was this old lady who had funded one of the first women's shelters in the UK, and who was interestingly talking about her experience with, I think, what was second wave feminism back then, right? About how the crazies were already there. And because it was such a and ironically, this one was so good because Sargon mostly let her talk. And on the one with Liana K, I found that really interesting because that was someone who had a very different, or has, because she's still very much active on YouTube, who has a very, very different perspective on feminism in video games, because she genuinely is a gamer and has a different perspective on feminism than Anita Sarkeesian has. And what I find really sad is that, well, she actually did a really good series on feminism in video games, and did a much fairer series. And I would have wished for the gaming community, or for the skeptic community, to pick up on this and actually have a good faith conversation, right? If they were actually caring about the stuff in games. But by that time, they had moved on to the political stuff, and pretty soon it was.
Well, not just the political stuff.
At the same time, there's this whole fucking Brexit.
Honestly, Liana K is, first of all, criminally undersubbed.
Yes.
I don't always agree with her, but I often do. In fact, more often than not.
Even if I disagree with her, I still value her perspective. That's how I see her. Like, really value her perspective.
Because she's coming at it honestly. These are honestly her ideas. She's not just trying to make a buck off of something. And the thing is she was chased out of the industry because of her. And
because she was an honest actor. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I value her quite a bit, and I wish that in general the gaming community valued her a lot more, because I think that she is an incredibly valuable perspective. And I got really fucking sick of watching the honey badgers continually tear her apart. In fact,
I don't even watch the honey badgers. Well, just give me an update on them, because really I have to admit that as soon as John Peterson entered the stage, I was not that interested in watching many of the skeptic community. Like, I also probably because at that time I started getting into university and stuff. So I actually don't really know anything about honey badgers. So maybe you can give me a bit of a description there.
Well, I haven't watched them in a long time, but see, this is where I parted ways with them. I always thought the honey badgers were had an interesting perspective. But I remember I was watching a stream a long time ago. This was right back during the height of the whole Trump, starting to really divide the community. And I remember watching a stream. They were talking about laws that in Islamic countries that didn't allow women to drive, and they were basically doing the thing that you usually see kind of feminist articles doing, where they go, more men dying, women most affected, right? Well, they did the exact same fucking thing. They say, okay, women aren't allowed to drive, they don't have all the rights, but it's really the men who are affected. Men, because men are driving. And I was just like, I am never watching another one of your videos.
Oh, that is so sad. That is so retarded. I find it so puzzling how people don't get that the world is a big place and people can be oppressed. Different people can be oppressed in different ways in different regions. Like,
yeah.
Oh.
Or like, you can go into America and you can see that there's nothing wrong with seeing, okay, here is where the culture negatively affects women. Here's where the culture negatively affects men. This is where the culture favors this, demographic. This is where the culture favors that demographic. There's nothing wrong with recognizing that it isn't all one-sided. There are areas where different groups have different kinds of disparities, and there's nothing wrong with recognizing that, but everybody wants to try and draw battle lines and going, no, let's talk about who has it worse. Well, fuck who has it worse. Let's look at where things are unequal and make them equal.
So I would actually say that the part of the I'm going to give an example for where I think a community did it correctly, right, and where the skeptic community failed. So if you look at well, 3 people actually. It's 3 people in there. Well, actually 4 because you can count Joe Rogan in almost there. What happened after the Evergreen stuff with Brett Weinstein is a someone you recognize, right? The name.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Professor Evergreen. I would say, but I'm probably forgetting someone. But the Weinstein brothers, it's because it's also his brother Eric. But Brett Weinstein, John Peterson too, and Sam Harris, and I'm trying to figure. I think there was a 4th. There were more people in this. They were actually, I think, pretty successful in knitting together this community, which they semi-jokingly call the intellectual dark web. I still see just talks hosted occasionally with 1 or 2 of those individuals and others who just are having the conversations. Right? They seem to have managed this, which I think honestly, probably because a lot of they have the simply more intelligent and older people, right? Like if you look at how many of those people are professors or, highly
I wanted to jump in
accomplished.
when you brought up Gamergate, because I had a very long conversation with Matt about this some time ago, and he told me that he believes it was the biggest mistake they ever made.
Who?
Gamergate. Matt. He believes everyone involved in Gamergate that it was one of the biggest mistakes ever made in this.
By whom? So who made the mistake? Everyone.
The people involved. The people who started it.
Sides or
no. The side.
Or just.
Matt, like he considered his involvement in it a mistake. For example. Am I having connection issues again?
No, you're not. Okay. No, you're not actually. I was just because I haven't talked.
The reason why he believes was because it was this brief moment of super attention on everyone involved in it. Like Matt and Co. They all had so many viewers, such a large audience. He said this a while ago to me, so I might not remember. And his conclusion was that basically from that moment onward, like I'm trying to see this for now at least. I will get to like the ideologies and all that later, but what happened in the end, from a practical term, from a content creator position, is that everyone constantly from that moment on tried to replicate the Gamergate moment. Non-stop.
Yeah.
Everyone just wanted it to repeat. Everyone wanted their own new Gamergate. I remember watching this quartering video ages ago where I did some weird fundraiser where I said, this thing could be as big as Gamergate. I'm not sure how often I've heard that. This thing could be as big as Gamergate. This thing could be Gamergate 2.0, 3.0. This could be Gamergate again. It's Gamergate all over again. Blah, blah, blah.
Oh, the comic stuff, too. That was just never going to get as big.
I don't even know what that was.
I noticed that. Oh, it was just the same thing because you actually see it right now. Even boy, it's maybe actually now this time it could become, because maybe have you seen this? I think I thought this was a meme once when I saw this thing popping in with Snowflake and stuff. Safe space, that shit.
Okay, so here's what's going on. First of all, that won't contribute to Comicsgate. Comicsgate
won't.
See, we're doing it again. See, we're doing it again. We're jumping into some inane, silly pop culture issue. Right.
Well,
now,
no,
you immediately want to talk about
it. Let me kind of break this one down, because I've actually been into comics is kind of my thing.
Oh, good.
So, essentially, with Marvel, what happened? So what happened is Marvel started hiring very how should we put it? Very
cheap ideological labor.
Yes, cheap ideological labor. And they started changing their characters, and they started, instead of like inventing new and interesting characters, they just started changing up their characters, and people got pissed. And so it started a movement called Comicsgate. And what Comicsgate does, unlike Gamergate, which I actually think is cool, is they support indie creators. In other words, when someone creates an indie comic, Comicsgate comes and says, "Hey, support this comic." So it's not just a negative movement. Unlike Gamergate, it actually has some positive sides to it in supporting indie creators. The latest thing with Marvel is they've released a couple very tone-deaf characters that are so tone-deaf that even the people that are their target audience, the kind of woke millennial or Gen Z audience, they have resoundingly said that it's insulting and have rejected it. So it's not just like the anti-SJWs. This one actually has united pretty much the entire comics community, and they pretty much all rejected it. Like I have a trans friend who compared it, who said like it's as bad as Marvel created a character who was the Negro.
Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah, I was gonna guess it was gonna go in that direction. Yeah. Basically,
that's how the trans community feels about these characters.
Isn't that very telling though that the crazies are literally gone? That nobody is like. I noticed that when the first Star Wars movies were out, I didn't like them because they were too remakey for me. Like when I watched the first one, it was like, hey, I have seen this again, and I was really disappointed. And then I didn't finish the second one because within the first hour, had this sense of, oh my god, they're literally just doing the same thing that they did 30 fucking years ago over again.
I didn't even watch the second one.
Yeah, but apparently there was a lot of SJW-isms in it.
I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care either. But hey, if I can finish the point, Asger, it's like the only thing that I have to say to the SJW-isms and Star Wars thing is, if you switch all the gender roles, like if you switch all the genders of the characters, it's still a shitty remake. So, from my perspective, but it's a matter of taste. But what I noticed when these movies were released was that people...
For me, where a lot of people
What I noticed when this was done was, it seemed to me that a certain group of people were making videos shitting on these movies because they felt, because of their political, YouTube community, whatever allegiance that they had to, and other people who might have probably not even liked the movies had made videos and had to make videos and tweets defending the movies, even though they probably didn't even like them, because they're shitty movies. They're just bland remakes with CGI.
And some claim that this is intentional.
Yeah,
the inclusion of these politics, that's an accusation I hear often, is that the inclusion of these virtue signaling and these politics is to use it to create controversy and deflect criticism.
Well, that's the thing. They don't do that anymore, and I don't like using the word SJW anymore because
I prefer intersectionals.
I just these kind of political aberrations which have no other purpose other than to be slurs. Let's be frank about this.
SJW, it's pretty much
it's a slur at this
it's
point.
A slur. Yeah.
And the thing is, they stopped doing this. They stopped doing that. They stopped defending something just because it is progressive.
Because it got too crazy for some people's
not just
taste.
because it got too crazy, but because they abandoned the ideological zealotry to a large extent.
I'm not sure of that, actually. I'm hesitant of saying that they actually abandoned the ideological zealotry.
Not completely, but they are more open to others. They're less confrontative. They're less like... You remember what it was like 4 years ago when these people were like, I am going to burn your life to the ground and ruin your life.
I would argue that those ideas actually have become more mainstream than ever. I would argue the opposite. Remember when doxing was like, that was the most evil thing you could do on the internet? Now people regularly call to dox people and destroy their lives on Twitter like it's nothing.
I actually disagree also with the assessment that they have simply been calmed down. Yeah, partially. I would say partially, because they in the culture not so much, right? But when it comes to just political culture and societally, I'm actually not sure who won. I think this is still very much ongoing.
What happened was, okay, a lot of people assumed that Trump getting elected would be the defeat of the SJWs, and I told I told my buddies, I was like, listen, you think that, but what's actually going to happen is it's going to legitimize their claims of racism being everywhere, sexism being everywhere. It's going to empower. They will win. You elect Trump, culturally they win, and I would argue that's what happened.
The epiphany that I had 6 months ago was I was just reading books and articles again, right? And I brought this topic, the SJW stuff, the anti-SJW stuff, up to someone. I realized that nobody in my real life circle had any kind of reference point to it. That to them this was just inane nonsense, and this completely furthered itself when I made videos on like real political issues that matter and historical events, and tried to explain how current political crises and conflicts came to be through historical events, right? These neutral observational videos that I'm trying to make. I can't claim to be completely objective, but you know, I had a conversation with one of my new subscribers with a few of them actually, who didn't even know who the fuck Sargon is. Like,
that must be a pretty good achievement for you.
Didn't even know. And this entire thing, you know, this culture war, is just an inane sideshow. That's how I see it. I don't see it as this relevant, big fight for the hearts and soul of Western culture, whatever. No, it's an inane, silly sideshow. There's nothing to it of any value.
Yeah. Well, I actually would there's one part where I would I'm not even sure if I think this myself, but I think you could make that argument. I would give you one instance where you could say that maybe not Gamergate, but the people around it, or people who would have supported it back then, made some wins. Was, I would say, Kingdom Come Deliverance, actually, because I was thinking back on you saying, oh yeah, they support independent creators. I actually also think, just by virtue of the press, of the online press breaking down, a lot of the old quote-unquote enemies in the gaming press just are fucking gone, right? Well, maybe not by virtue of Gamergate, but I do think that one thing that certainly was achieved is that the hegemony in video game journalism that ended up being kind of broken. I think it's reforming somewhat right now.
Well, some of them are not even gone. I recently.
Yeah, some of them aren't even gone. I know.
No, they're now on our side. Some of them, at least in one particular case. Like I was recently watching some videos through the anti-SJW sphere stuff. And I saw that shithead Glinner, Graham Linehan.
I don't even know what it is.
Graham Linehan is an Irish comedian, I think, who was active during Gamergate, and he was a particularly nasty little shit towards people like us who were on that particular side of Gamergate. Really, really, really nasty. And now people who we used to associate with, right, embrace Glinner because he's a shithead to trans people.
Oh my god.
And just completely overlook the fact that it doesn't change the fact that he's just a nasty little Irish goblin.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would say a bit of fallout from all of this is, and I think this is again where culturally kind of that side won, is it's difficult to now criticize something on any of those sorts of levels without just being lumped into the crazies like the quartering, like One Angry Gamer and shit like that. Like, okay,
because nobody is making
particularly crazy.
Nobody is making the arguments. Like, I think I told you about this, Ansgar, but not sarcastic necessarily. When the alt-right drove me off YouTube, the skeptics slipped into my DMs, some of them at least. They sent me videos like after 5 months from SJW YouTubers, left-wing YouTubers who were gaining popularity, telling me, we will help you come back to YouTube if you respond to them. and then it was the alt-right who sent me videos from now more and more popular left-wing YouTubers saying, respond to them and we will leave your family alone, and shit like that. The reason what you brought up earlier, it's nobody wants to do the research. Nobody wants to, like, if you want to respond to someone like ContraPoints or Free Arrows. I've only watched 2 Free Arrows videos. I didn't really watch ContraPoints videos because I just downloaded the subtitles and read them, which is extremely helpful if you want to cut through all the presentation and get to the point of something. So I really recommend it to anyone who wants to.
Good idea.
Yeah, it's how we found out that Black Pigeon Speaks was a plagiarist. Anyway,
oh yeah, that because you had the subtitles and you can run them through searches.
It's a complete side issue, but it's something that I've genuinely always done when I respond to someone. I always download the subtitles and read the video because you read a lot between the lines, and it cuts out all the nonsense. But anyway, what it is also, if you were to respond to these videos, it's no longer the inane, silly whining of 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's well-researched arguments being made. You'd have to read the books these people are referencing. You have to go and you have to do the research.
Yep.
Like, I was pondering and considering responding to ContraPoint's video on the West, right? And I went out and bought Foucault's book. I read it years ago. The History of Madness, Die Geschichte des Wahnsinns. And these are the steps that are now required to do that. You'll have to actually read. You have to actually research. You can't just go, I disagree with you because you're bad. But that is what people still do. Like, that's the thing. That's the reason why Glinner, for example, is now being slowly integrated into what was once the skeptic sphere. Because no matter on what issue, the sphere that we're a part of has adopted this mentality of they are the enemies. No matter what they endorse, we have to oppose it. And you remember, like, 4 or 5 years ago when you had people around claiming that there were 90 different genders? That, by and large, is now over, and they now narrowed it down to, okay, we are here for trans rights, and that is a legitimate cause.
Yeah, although you could still potentially break some necks in that area.
You could, but it is, by and large, a good and legitimate cause. And the people who we associate,
it is a good cause. Yes.
Well, the point I was going to make, instead of having a reasoned conversation about it, the people who we used to associate with adopted the automatic stance of, nope, trans rights bad because these people bad. And by these people, I don't mean trans people, but the people who are now advocating for their rights. So this
anything that comes from that direction.
Mentality of everything these people stand for is bad because it's these people. That's the thing.
That's maybe a bit of a knee-jerk, I think, but I think also the anti-immigration part, right, is a big thing in the Trump part, and also in Sargon's sphere, just the anti-EU part, right? That just took out so much space. It just, like, if you're politically active, and Sargon was just doing his Britain, Brexit, all that, like, that subsumed so much content. And he actually used to somewhat get into stuff. He actually used to read some.
Oh, he made some really good video essays 5 years ago. Do you remember when he supported Bernie Sanders?
Oh yeah.
It's just it seems like a parallel universe at this point.
No, it makes sense. I think it makes perfect sense though, because a lot of the hopes and dreams were crushed when you look at. At the 2016 election, right, with the whole thing with Bernie, and then, oh no, fuck this shit with Hillary, and then Trump actually fucking wins, right? He actually fucking does it. And pandemonium ensues.
I don't endorse candidates, but I found the idea behind let's endorse him because it triggers the libs to be fucking insane.
Yeah, insane,
yeah.
The dumbest reason to endorse anybody ever.
But the thing is also that I'm not on that side of people who go, like, running around claiming Trump is a fascist. I don't see him as that. I think he's more like the American version of Berlusconi.
In the fucking idiot, yeah. It's a really good one, Berlusconi.
Yeah, no, he is the American Berlusconi. He is the American Berlusconi. And some countries go through a phase where they elect an idiot. That just happens.
Although I think you're selling Berlusconi short, because how long did Berlusconi stay in office?
Oh God.
I want to I just want to do a quick aside on that, on the Trump as a fascist thing. I had a sort of a mild debate on my former co-host I was on a show with, and we were talking about gun control, and I just brought up, like, okay, so you want to ban all civilians from owning guns? Like, yeah. So, like, do you believe that do you honestly believe that Trump has the potential to become a fascist dictator? It's like, yes. Then why would you want to disarm the population? And he just stared at the camera for a moment before moving on.
Yeah, that's a classic one too. Yeah, pick one. We want strong government. Yeah, Trump is the government. Although that's one, you can't make that argument much longer. I'm legitimately a bit concerned of what's going to happen, because right now it looks like I would have been concerned both ways. Like, before Corona, it looked like Trump was going to win 2020. Would have been mine. No,
because when people get that check, they're going to think, look at the great job Trump is doing. I just got a check in the mail.
I think you're underestimating how bad Corona is going to hit the U.S. and the world.
I know how bad it's going to hit. In fact, I think if anything, I might be overestimating. The problem is that even when he does the most inane, stupid shit, his followers don't care. They write it off.
But he doesn't need his followers to win the election. He needs the independents. And if you look at how independents have graded him on his response, then sorry, what were you saying?
We're sidetracking. We're getting off.
Oh yeah, sorry, we're sidetracking. Let's try to bring this back. But I think we had it at the point of where were we? Oh yeah, we had it at the point of I think one of the big problems was trying to find something that the community could actually stand for, right? And the quality of content would have required.
The community was a lie.
Yeah, there was never a community.
Like, one of the most embarrassing things when the alt-right secretly recorded me, and it was interestingly something that they didn't hark on, fascinatingly enough, was I, behind closed doors, talked about what I really think of Bering's content. And that was secretly recorded and published. And it just revealed something that could have ruined me more. Like, they could have, instead of lying, they could have just stuck to what I've actually said. Because that clip revealed that I was a coward, that I didn't have the courage to publicly say what I actually thought about the content that some of these people produced. The community was a lie. People disliked each other. People were willing and ready to backstab each other for a few clicks and views. Warski is probably the best example of that. And people who publicly supported the alt-right and some really dubious far-right figures 2 years ago are now trying to join LeftTube.
Yep. I think the best way to look at, like the best example to look at, is literally just look at the people around the intellectual dark web. How were they doing it? But the problem that we have is that these people are simply more accomplished than, what an internet community could muster. Like, these people legitimately, like, we're talking about people that not only can are very good in their fields, right?
I'm gonna reveal something.
And who testified before Congress, like Weinstein. We're also talking about people who fill stages, like Harrison Peterson.
It's not just that. I think it has a lot to do with. Remember how in the early days, 4 years ago, Sargon used to give pretty much anyone a shout out who happened to make videos attacking the SJWs, no matter how silly the content actually was. That's the thing. This populism, no matter how stupid you may be, as long as you're on my side, you're my friend.
Self-policing would have been appropriate.
Not necessarily self-policing of a community, but self-policing of yourself. Like,
and who you endorse.
Hold yourself to a standard. Don't hold others to a standard. First and foremost, hold yourself to a standard.
Yeah.
Like, make the videos of the kind of standard that you want out there.
Well, I mean, I never made a response video just because of that. The most I've ever done is take excerpts of something that somebody said that is a, you know what I mean, popular idea, and use it to make a presentation. I've always done presentation style videos.
It's frightening. It's really frightening. The first response videos I made, like, they were literally like amongst my first 5-minute videos. 2 were response videos to Francesca Ramsey, right? Mm-hmm. And I stopped after that because I realized that I went to Francesca Ramsey's original video and I realized, holy shit, my followers are actually going there and fucking around over there, and that's frightening. It's frightening once you figure out that people will actually do what you tell them to. I didn't even tell them to go dislike a video or anything like that. They just did it. And once you have that realization, you backtrack it. And from that moment on, I only ever did response videos to those who responded to me. You know, it's a really weird thing. Like I said before, I think the response video format is one of the main reasons all of this fell apart. Because rather than, let's face the fact here, rather than being a discussion or a conversation, it's a fight. It's an online cockfight. That's all it is. And people are betting on sides.
Well, then, what could have been done better? Or what could be done better now?
Presentations of ideas.
I don't even know, like that's the thing. One of the reasons why I'm doing these streams with you guys in the next couple of weeks is I don't even know if there's anything that should be rebuilt. Maybe.
No, I don't think so either, that you necessarily need to rebuild something. I think you can start from the ground up and build something new either, right?
I don't even think if I want to build any kind of politically motivated, like the decision I made right now, like I had a private conversation with someone where we asked, like, we had a conversation like this about what went wrong, and I think one of the additional reasons why things went wrong is the monetization of it all. Because it was monetized, because you got a paycheck for telling people stuff that they already believed, like tell me something that I agree with, basically. Because of the format that was set up, that you could just make inane, silly response videos to little girls and ramble on about how you didn't like whatever wig in whatever movie that you picked out to be particularly too woke in this particularly month. And the monetization of politics in that way. I concluded in that conversation with a friend that if there was ever a liberal community to be rebuilt on YouTube, one of the first things it needed to do was to kill the grift, meaning don't monetize your political opinion pieces anymore. Just don't take money for any video in which you give your own opinion. And that's something that I do now. I try to be objective in the presentation of my videos. I am trying, I'm not sure if I'm there yet, to just present facts and not give my own opinion. And, you know, if you build it on something like that, you know, no getting paid for giving your opinions and stuff like that, it will probably be less attractive. But it is, in my opinion, the only way to do it to regain a semblance of credibility again.
Yeah, possibly. Quite possibly. I think also...
I don't want to repeat. I'm sorry for that, but I don't want what happened to repeat itself. Yeah. I am really grossed out by what happened. I'm really grossed out how these so-called classical liberals were, yeah, we're left-wing, we just don't like the crazies. And let me introduce you to my Nazi friends. I devolved into this madness. I don't want that to happen again.
And I think ultimately, especially when it came to just going for the political route, there were real opportunities for having conversations, right? But really missed opportunities in the end. I had some hopes that things were going better when, you remember when I think, although that may probably just be from looking in the outside, you may know more about this than me, but remember when that whole thing with Lacey happened and Chris Reagan, and with Lacey and Sargon made,
Oh, I
you could say made peace.
I found that gross because one of the things that I don't do is judge people for who they date, and I found it really disgusting how people judged her.
What did you find really disgusting?
I found it disgusting how people judged her or him and him.
Well, but nobody in I don't think the skeptic community did that. Well, there's some people.
Some people, but it's still. I'm just gonna state this here. I don't drag people's private relations into any of this.
Oh yeah.
I will not. I refuse to.
No, that's also not what I meant. What I meant was more focused on the. I was just mentioning that because that was also the context of the time. What I meant more was, I think the bigger part of it, what could have in fact the community, but ultimately went nowhere, was Lacey and Sargon, trying to make up a bit. And I think if Sargon actually learned the right lesson from that, he might have realized that, holy shit, maybe I should try to be a bit less of a shitlord, and I might actually be able to talk to people more, because, you can, it's fine and dandy to cause offense, but ultimately that shouldn't be your goal if you want to convince people.
Oh, you're hitting on a very important point here. The causing offense thing became far too important.
Yes.
It became the main thing.
Yeah, I think because it may have been, it would be important to stand your ground on certain things, but I think people just lost track of what it means to be polite. And some of the stuff is just, really gross. Yeah. Well,
the Nazi thing is something that we can discuss later in some other stream.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is.
I also think in other contexts with more people, right?
Well, that's the thing that gave it the final kill, basically. The fact that everyone now had Nazi friends.
But yeah, to be fair, that was a problem that was visible from the start. Though we always had this problem that it was hard. At the beginning was actually. I'm not even sure if attempts were made, but it was always because probably people already saw a futility, at least in the beginning, of trying to get rid of the alt-right, because you already had the accusations from the SJWs wouldn't have stopped back then,
but that's
it was wasted time.
That's the thing. When I made my, I think I was the first in the community to make videos against the alt-right.
Yeah,
went after edgy, but when I made these alt-right videos again, the thing that led up to the shit show, I got a lot of DMs from skeptic YouTubers that were, hey dude, it's so great that you're doing this, because with what you're doing, the SJWs will finally be unable to call us Nazis. And I was just going like, wait a moment, I'm not doing it for that.
Yeah.
That's not the reason I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I don't like Nazis.
Yeah, and I think people really underestimated, and which is ironic, because a lot of these people noticed the subversion of certain let's call them the SJWs once more, of the subversion of the SJWs, of them subverting the left basically, and they were completely blind to the subversion the fucking Nazis did, the alt-right did. Yes. And this happened from the very beginning. Like, this happened as early as Breitbart getting in on Gamergate to a degree, right? And Breitbart itself probably changed too over that time. Like, I don't think back then. What was it? Oh yeah, that was back when Milo was still a thing. Remember that?
When I made my first anti-alt-right video about edgy. Like within 2 weeks after.
Oh yeah, edgy swings.
Yeah. 2 weeks after that, I had how do I call it, an SJW shit show bursting in over me. And I remember back then, like, I don't know if you were in my private group back then, but I had videos set up. I made one short.
No, I wasn't in your private group. I joined only after you returned to YouTube after the alt-right stuff.
Okay, now the first time I went after the alt-right back in 2017. Could have even been late 2016. I'm not entirely sure, sorry. But I had plans to make like dozens of videos on them. Dozens for almost an entire year. And I think I made 2 or 3 videos on them. And then I had this SJW shit show rolling over me. I'm not entirely sure. Probably over something I tweeted. And what it did to me was it convinced me that they were the bigger problem. And I think that is the thought process that unfortunately...
That happened to a lot of people, I think, tunnel vision, basically. And the SJWs were making it easy. Because look at it this way. You're getting money for talking shit about them. They seem pretty powerful, right? They seem pretty powerful, but they're actually not that powerful to you directly because all the screaming, right, in the wider world kind of doesn't hit you because you have your community.
There's a philosophical thing that should be added there, which is... remember in the early days of the crazy left-wing SJWs, when they said things that you can never criticize anything that black people do, that any other minority do, because they are oppressed, and you can only criticize those in power, blah 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 blah. That line of thought, do you remember that?
Yeah, you can only punch up and all that shit. Yeah. But racism is prejudice plus power. Yeah.
When I made my second wave of videos against the alt-right, right, in late 2017, and when things started getting heated, you know, and when it became increasingly clear that people will have to take a stand at some point of either I'm with the alt-right or against them, I started getting DMs from people that were like, you're wasting your time because the alt-right doesn't have any power. And that just snapped in my head. It was like, wait, isn't that the same shit that the people who you opposed said?
Yep.
Isn't our entire point that it is irrelevant how powerful a certain idea, how much power there is behind a certain idea, we should criticize ideas anyway? You know, just this weird... I'm sorry for bringing this up. It was a weird...
No, I think it's a very, very... It is the main point, right? This was the main point you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, it became this weird thing where... Yeah, tunnel vision. Everything became about... I think some people... Like, one thing with the content in the anti-SJW... I like to bring up the mer wage gap bullshit. There's something that Schuon had said 6 years ago, or 7 years ago. And from that point onward, you can find probably thousands of videos at this point of people just repeating what she said at some point. That's the thing with anti-SJW YouTube. For years, most people just repeated something that Sargon, Shu, or someone else said years ago.
Yes.
There was a laziness behind it. You had this segment of left-wing YouTubers who were, unfortunately, by and large, always repeating the same nonsense. Now they don't anymore. And it was easy. It was easy to make videos on that because you just had to endlessly repeat what someone else said before you. But as soon as it came to a new challenge, making videos where you'd have to research something new and argue against something new, gone. No need to hop on board that. In fact, it's easier to call you an SJW if you do that.
No, you know who was fairly right-wing in general, but actually I had a deep respect for his methodology, was Teal Deer back in the day. The amount of research he put into his videos was actually quite impressive.
Oh, whatever happened to him? What I used to watch him, but I stopped like years ago. Just by being busy and by honestly, I'm just someone who really found much on the intellectual dark web and the conversation on Fred Weinstein, again, Harris, Peterson, what you have. I found those people much more interesting once they got going. So that's why I just stopped watching a lot of people. Not Grog though.
I read books now. I rediscovered my love for books again. That's what I do now.
Yeah, that's really good.
I spend 2 hours a day reading books, which is great. Because
by the way, Crowd, do you think it would be interesting to talking? It may be really hard to facilitate, but just hypothetically, if you could, would you be interested in talking to any one of those people, like Harris, Weinstein?
No.
Or
right
not?
Right now, what I want to do, and this is something that
you just want to make your videos.
No, it's very important for me to establish what I want to do for the next couple of months is just do this objectivity thing. Just objectively present the historic, political, geographic, and sociological and economic facts upon which I base my political beliefs and form my political beliefs. There's a danger in that. I know that when I do this, at any given moment, some lefty or right-winger or whatever, or someone who's completely opposed to anything I believe, can jump in and reshape it and base their own conclusions on it. There's a danger that can happen, but I want to try that. It's really important for me to try to do this thing to see.
Well, I wouldn't even call it a danger, because it would just be a different interpretation, right? Then you can have a discussion based on that.
Yeah, but that objectivity experiment is important for me. I want to try it, and I want to see how far I can go with it, and I want to do this for a couple of months, maybe even a year.
I mean, your videos have been really good, right? So keep doing it. And at least you can monetize those, because it's not your opinion.
I'm also extremely paranoid of other content creators.
You're paranoid of what?
I'm paranoid. Like, you have seen some of the private DMs I had with skeptics. Like how they...
So you're paranoid of what? You cut out for me for a moment.
I'm paranoid of other content creators. I am paranoid of being stabbed in the back again.
Yeah. No, makes sense. That is a reasonable attitude. Seeing what happened.
Like I did this thing. I did this thing recently. I didn't watch any SJW videos. I shouldn't. I'm trying to not use that word anyway. But I didn't watch any of the videos.
Lefty, intersectional, whatever. We know who we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I didn't watch any of their videos for 1.5 years. Like, I literally didn't. Like, and I have to be honest with you, it was out of spite. It was literally out of spite, because when my former skeptic friends and colleagues, whatever I should call them, and the alt-right slipped into my DMs going like, respond to these people for us. You know, I just, fuck you. I'm not. Fuck you, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. So it was out of spite, but in around February and January, I started watching the videos again, right? And what was the point I was going to make? Shit. Yeah, it's then when I had like these thoughts about maybe the response video format was wrong, right? And then I started doing the line of thought which led me to having these live streams with you guys now. You know, it's
well, I think it's mostly. I think that what these live streams could mostly serve, and I'm not sure who would be interested in watching these.
There is barely interest in this. Like, it's literally just.
But I think these are more just for the people who are really interested, right, in figuring this out, and ultimately it could just serve to figure it out for yourself.
The point I was making earlier was when I watched some of these left-wing YouTubers, right, in February and January. I realized, like, I had to watch their videos again, because I realized after a week or two of watching their videos that I wasn't actually watching their videos. I realized that I was partially watching the videos, listening to how they said things rather than what they actually said, and looking at their Twitter feeds as a result, because I was trying to figure out how they were similar to the people I used to associate with. Like, I'm really paranoid. Like, I compare, like, I see, like, I thought I saw behavioral patterns of Sargon in Peter Coffin, for example, and shit like that. Like, I'm really, really paranoid of other content creators. So, to what you wanted to go back earlier, to having conversation with other YouTubers, I'm going to avoid that for a long time.
Well, in this case, that's also why I mentioned those people specifically, because they're not primarily YouTubers, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're not actually primarily content
I don't think they
creators.
would be particularly interested in that.
Yeah, they wouldn't even be interested. Or maybe they would be, right?
I watched a talk with what's that English author called again, who writes for The Spectator?
I don't know which one. When was that? Can you give me a title for it? I can search it out.
Slow Death of Europe or something. God fucking damn it, he's a conservative.
Oh, I think I know who you mean. I'm trying to find.
Yeah, I watched a talk with him recently where he talked about what are we going to do about the cultural left-wing thing, the culture war, blah blah blah. And I thought, how about you just ignore it, and talk about the political issues that you actually want to talk about. And I want to try that too. Maybe there's some of that reasoning in what I'm going to do now as well.
Yeah.
Live and let live, so to speak.
Yeah, to a degree, right? But I think that's a problem we should not lose complete sight of. It's live and let live, and that also means you have to expect the other party to also live and
fired anymore. Like when I watched the old videos, remember there was a Nazi. Why did I say Nazi? Sorry, there was a NASA. That was a weird Freudian slip. A NASA rocket scientist who worked on, I think this was in 2012, a NASA rocket scientist who worked on a satellite that was being shot up to Mars, right? And he gave
the T-shirt thing?
Yeah, the T-shirt.
Which was, by the way, designed by a woman?
Yeah, that kind of craziness no longer happens.
Maybe we just don't see it happen.
Do you think so?
Like, I'm not sure. Like, there's this thing of survivorship bias, potentially here. I've heard this echo multiple times when I've heard when it came to discussions that Weinstein participated in, and when it came to the question of, oh yeah, should you stand up to when things like this, like happened to Weinstein or so, happen in your institutions or in your careers. I think we should be careful not to underestimate because as Ansgar already pointed out, it's maybe that just certain things of destroying people's lives just got normalized, and maybe the people, like, we should not discount the possibility that the more vicious elements have simply gotten better at hiding it. Maybe it could also be that they aren't doing it anymore, right? I think if you look at the whole thing
of
it
now as well, or I shouldn't say we.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, that too.
No. I mean, look at what the quartering does on YouTube.
Why
does this cartoon character not have large enough tits?
But then again, is that really sending because that's not using institutional power though.
No, that's true.
What I'm worried about is that we miss the more subtle things that could be going on, right? Or that are not unlikely to go on in institutions. I mean, you see.
Here's what I would say honestly, is I do think that in the media, sort of the left-wing crazies, I wouldn't say that they had a total victory, but they certainly pushed media more in that direction. It's like, think of it like bending plastic, right? You bend it past where you want it, and then it ends up, it kind of springs back, but it's still bent in that direction. So the media has certainly bent in that direction. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it has bent in that direction. Things are certainly celebrated in the media that seem ridiculous. Now, I'm not going to go get outraged and shit like that, but some of the stuff that comes up in the media that gets, oh my god, isn't this wonderful? I just go, why? Whatever.
Why? I don't care.
Yeah, just I don't care. And then there's certainly a normalization of cancel culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. That's the one I'm worried. Like, I'm not worried about. Like, I have no problem, right? I have no problem if the intersectionals want certain characters in the media, like or in fiction or stuff like that. I don't care, right? Or if they want to celebrate certain things, I think go ahead, right? But I think it may not be just like there is the cancel culture element. What I'm worried about too is what about the cancel culture that we don't see, the one that is in the institutions.
I have a completely different opinion of this. But yeah. Have you ever looked at the people who do the cancelling?
I have never, actually. Not really.
Well, who cancelled me?
Well, yeah, the alt-right in your case.
Exactly.
Well, I wouldn't. Here's the thing. I would say that the right wing was the original cancel.
No. That's not the point. That's not the point I'm making. Like, if you look at the Twitter accounts of other cancellations, what you will find by an average and by and large, it's that it's usually marginalized people, and that word marginalized has been kind of declared to be this kind of naughty, silly SJW term, which it isn't. There are marginalized groups out there. There are people who are struggling.
Yes.
Underprivileged people who have trouble meeting ends meet, you know, who live from paycheck to paycheck, whatever group they may be. You know, I noticed, for example, that the trans community on Twitter is particularly vicious. But I believe that is due to the fact that they are a marginalized group, a group that has barely any power in life. I mean, they often have barely any power over their own circumstances. You know, these are people who are often kicked out of their homes, out onto the streets, etc., etc. You know? And if you're a powerless person, and let's be frank about this, the alt-right for a very long time consisted of people who didn't have any power. Yeah. And then suddenly when they have power, snap. The thing is, it's not that they don't know how to use it, but they are overzealous in using it. Like, give powerless people power, instant, large power, and they will go out and chop people's head off left, right, and forward. I think that is what cancel culture is in the end. It's people who didn't have any power suddenly having an excess of power at their hands. That's all. That's what I think.
That's a fair assessment, maybe. Yeah. Although here's what I'm going to give you an example of what I'm worried about, right? Which one? How was that? What name was that? That was one of the cases around the whole Bill C-16 debate, and with Jordan Peterson. What's her name again? That one, not just a student. I think she taught a course, grammar course.
I know who you're talking about. Numbnuts.
About who? What?
I know who you're talking about.
What's her name again? So you know who I'm talking about, right? That girl or that woman, young woman who recorded that conversation, right, in the equity office, right, which ended up being quite significant, right, which ended up like creating significant waves, right? What I wonder is, how pervasive is that, right? Was that just
that kind of institutional thing? Yeah.
The one, was that just this one instance
I should clarify for you. I call her numbnuts because she's a communications major. I have no respect for anyone who studies communications.
That's mean.
It's true.
I know people who study communications.
Yes, it's worthless.
I don't study it myself, but okay. Well, very, very uncharitable. But you know, certainly, so that's what I'm worried about, and I think that's something where not enough attention was paid, because the attention was, this particularly nasty professor. And this is also someone, as that John Peterson pointed out.
A counter example.
Go ahead first.
When I started studying history 2 years ago, right? Last year, I booked a course in gender history. I think gendered history and feminist history studies.
Oh. Was it interesting?
Actually, yes.
Because
one of the things that was revealing to me was how detached the culture was of things. Because I had this feminist professor who wrote her doctor thesis on feminist history, and she actually wrote something really interesting. What she did was study the divorce documents and court documents of divorces going back 300 years. Like she
that's interesting.
Wrote things about how divorce changed, you know, over the centuries. But anyway, she gave this lecture about gender and trans people throughout history, and you had this not old, like she's in her 50s, trying to explain to a class of young people who were predominantly women, right, what a trans person is. And you could just see the despair on her face when questions were asked of her, like, why isn't this like normal women and things like that, you know? And it just revealed to me as well that this culture war thing is almost in its entirety an internet thing. It's not really integrated in real life. And the thing about Lindsay Shepherd, I just remembered her name.
Oh yeah, that was the name. Yeah,
that she's a communications major, and feels like communications are just
swarmed.
Are
swarmed.
Okay, because the reason this is almost entirely on the internet, right? And one of the reasons is that most people aren't super engaged in these in-depth topics, these cultural topics. These topics will eventually affect the culture, but this is, the online is where the cutting edge of cultural dynamics are happening, and what's going to shape the future of our culture. And there's a reason for that, and that's because unlike the real world, like let's say I'm a radical activist of any kind, right? The vast majority of the people around me are not that. The vast majority of the people physically around me that I will interact with in my everyday lives are going to hear me spout some radical activist shit, roll their eyes, and move on with their life, right? But online, I can find perhaps thousands, maybe millions of other like-minded people from around my country or around my world that we can all get together, and suddenly we're a group of radical activists. The online sphere has changed how quickly culture can change, adapt, and how it's changed the face of activism and social movements because of that.
One aspect of it. Although here's the thing, because if you really try to trace back some of that intersectionality, right? It's old, right? Like I'm not going to say it predates the internet, but you could trace this back as far as the 70s and 60s. Some of this, or the early instances, and it obviously developed just in over itself. And it probably, I'm not even saying that it doesn't have that it shouldn't exist, right? Or that it in itself is wrong. But somewhere along the lines, they had some bad actors and I think some genuine authoritarians on board. And I think the best example of seeing how this can boil over into a university was Evergreen. And I am doubtful that that was it. Maybe that's because I'm a bit pessimistic, but I don't think that there isn't a second Evergreen somewhere, right? That could... right, where people have these attitudes and are basically just radicalizing students. One of these things, one of the videos that a lot of people laughed about, but that actually genuinely, I can say, broke my heart, but it hurt seeing that, was... so you remember that ridiculous video of the, I think it's South African students, I'm not sure, of that one young black woman advocating for African science and that voodoo bullshit.
Oh yeah.
That sounded fun. I found that just sad, because I'm assuming I'm assuming I could be wrong. Like, this is under the assumption that she's genuine African woman, right? So she's not African American. She's actually living in Africa, and she's going to university in an African nation, which are still developing nations. They need bright young minds.
The thing about that,
I find this tragic.
The thing about that, though, is the solution that I found to that was, okay, instead of just making a response video to someone who makes ridiculous claims about history and blah 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 blah, I'm just going to make my own videos where I present how geography impacted human development, because you can't just walk up to a mountain and say mountains are social constructs, and therefore the natural borders they create don't exist. I'm going to try to present these kinds of things: geography, economics, all that stuff, in a neutral fashion. Alternative explanation models for why the world is as it is. Instead of going like, you are dumb SJW, cultural Marxism, blah, 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 bullshit,
Just explain how the world works so that people actually start,
Not necessarily explain how the world works, because I can't presume to have the arrogance to say, oh no, I know how this really works. No, but just, here's an alternative explanation model.
Yeah.
This here might make a little more sense to you.
And the more people start doubting the whole... prejudice plus power dynamics, and just the entire power dynamics which unfolded in the Evergreen stuff. I think that's where you can really see it like there.
There is a historian. Let me look up his name.
What are you looking for?
A book.
And people like some of the ideological underpinnings, right, of breaking down everything into power dynamics, almost it just makes people more likely to be bad faith actors and to just seek power gains instead of actually having conversations. And I think you're actually completely right in that it is really important to put forward your own explanations, right, which can then serve as an alternative. So I guess that would probably be the lesson for if there ever were to be a new liberal, however you want to call it, classical liberal, whatever, sphere on YouTube, it would have to consist of that.
Book. Here it is, Fernand Braudel, famous historian, like revolutionized how we conduct historical research. And the book I'm holding here is The Mediterranean and the Mediterranean World in the Age of Philip II of Spain. And he was the first historian, a French historian, and he published this book in 1949. And he was one of the first historians to try to explain how geography impacts history. And he argued that the Mediterranean, in particular the European half, has very arid soil, which is very hard to use to build a sufficient agricultural sector that provides not just a supply but a surplus of food. Therefore you needed stricter control over the peasants, and that's why Mediterranean countries have oligarchies, developed oligarchic forms of government. That is one of the main claims he makes in this book, right? And it's an explanation model. It's not related to race.
Just in case my dog's crawling at the mirror in the background, in case you hear something.
That was just a brain fart of mine as well, just bringing this up. But yeah, like these kinds of explanation models, because there's also counter argument to that model. What's his name? Robert.
Oh, sorry.
Not Robert Kaplan, a Turkish historian. Acemoglu. Yes, Acemoglu pointed out that before colonization, right? Like if you look at North and South America today, South America is poorer than North America, which leads you to believe that possible the tropical climate and geography of the South leads to the poverty there. But if you look at America before colonization, South America was wealthier than North America.
Yeah.
Sorry for bringing this up. I'm sidetracking.
No, I think you were sidetracking, but at the same time, it leads into what you were gone while I said this. But I'm not sure if you heard it. What I said, I think you're exactly right in your assessment and in your goal of presenting your own views, right, and presenting alternative models.
I'm not just presenting my views. Like these two models that I presented to you, like the French historian claiming that geography shapes our destiny.
Yeah.
And then Acemoglu saying no, it doesn't, because Acemoglu argues mainly that it's state institutions that shape our destiny. These are contradictory perceptions of the world, and these are the perceptions that I'm going to try. Like most people that we face on YouTube now, they abandoned the stupid power dynamic screechery, and they're using sophisticated models of explanation, Marxist analysis. And what I will try to do is show to people that the Marxist analysis is self-limiting. There are so many ways to interpret why things happen, and I would like to open people's horizons to that if I can, before I go back into making direct political commentary or response videos of any kind.
I think that's a very, very good plan, and I think that would be something. This idea of broadening people's horizons could be the one thing where I could see you potentially building a community around. That would be the one thing where I would say, yep, that might just work.
If I do anything political again, it will be on the second channel anyway, and it will be, and that's the thing that I brought up earlier, it will be unmonetized. But I'm not going to demand from people to do the same. Like if I build one, I believe that it is very important that if we have any kind of standards and principles that we set, that first and foremost we should expect for people to enforce them upon themselves, to not go out and police people. That it should be people who are capable of having a standard set for themselves, first and foremost. Who live by what they preach, live by what they believe. Yeah.
Makes sense.
This would be hard and tough to like. It would be tough to build this. This would be a slow build, right? Slowly growing community, if at all. But I think it could last. Just a question of finding people who are actually interested in that, right? I think the audience eventually is there, right? With support. I think you've seen this with your videos.
Look on YouTube now. Everything that's left is a far left and a far right. Let's be honest about this. And there's people in between who, however, are not centrists, but just grift to whatever provides more clicks. Like, it is, to me, it is incredible. Like, Bounty King is the worst example. A YouTuber who literally within a single year went from praising the skeptics to praising the SJWs to praising the alt-right, to praising the skeptics to praising the alt-right to praising the SJWs.
I never really understood who that guy was. I just watched one or two videos that Sargo made with him. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy? Do I care? Why should I care? I don't
dozens of people like this. I remember people who threw me under the bus during the entire alt-right thing, who are now saying, "Oh, I always opposed the alt-right." Yeah, you did, boy. Yeah, you did. Or skeptos who now, try to seamlessly mold into the left-wing YouTube sphere and try to just overlook the fact that they spent years terrorizing these people almost. It's something that we have to acknowledge as well. Like, this is a controversial topic, but we did do things to them that were not necessary.
Yeah, and not necessary, not nice, I would say.
Yeah, and they did things to us too.
Yeah.
But it didn't justify doing the same things back to them, or worse.
Yeah, and it depended on it's pointless to look at who was more nasty or stuff like that. That's pointless, right? That's a pointless.
I think we can also look at one of the big failures. Is I would say that we won. Let's just talk about it as an us versus them, even though it really wasn't an us versus them. But let's just view it that way for a moment. We may have won the online debates and the online, let's call it war, but they won in the real world, right?
Because no. They won on the internet as well. Look at what videos they make now. Long-formed, well-argued, no more insane screeching.
Well, not just that. Hold on. Like we may have become more popular, right? We may have become more more people listening to us, right? But nobody's in the regular world, nobody's taking what we did back then seriously, right?
I think we lost YouTube too, to be honest.
Well, now, yeah, but I'm sort of yes and no. I think I think that the anti-SJW thing is still far more popular than far leftist.
Oh yeah, because it grained itself into pop culture. Now you have, I hate the fact that I can't watch any movie critics anymore. That there's nobody out there anymore talking about writing, cinematography, acting. That every single fucking YouTube movie critic out there is a fucking pop culture critic who every 5 minutes I found some feminism poo-poo shit that I need to call out. It drives me nuts. Like anti-SJWism drained into the pop culture and became the new Anita Sarkeesian pop culture critic. It became this
completely agree.
Fucking tedious to me. I hate
it. But my point is, though, in the real world, right, it's hard to sell. It's easy to sell. Listen, I was just for trans rights, and look how mean these people were. We need to do something about this. The world responds to that. The world doesn't respond to, you know what I mean? This person was an insane ideologue, and look, they were saying this, and this. But let me give you this nuanced thing about how they were onto some right ideas, but how they were really wrong. The world doesn't respond to that. But it was really easy to respond to, I'm a victim because all these, white dude bros were mean to me because I'm a woman and said something on the internet.
I'm not sure I agree, but maybe then it would be not our quote-unquote victories, but, the victories of the more elders, because I think if you look at it in the intellectual Dark space, if you look at Sam Harris, massive following, Peterson certainly not to be underestimated in that, right? He's the spirit of the sphere now with his health problems, but that's just that man alone.
Yeah,
the impact that guy had.
Persona non grata almost. Like, if you talk about how much here's the thing, how much influence over regular people, like out in the world, how much influence do you think he has on that culture? I would argue almost none.
I would argue pretty substantial. It's just that he was never really interested in using it.
I have to put out that I don't think media in general doesn't have as much influence on culture as people believe it does.
I would say mainstream media has quite a bit of influence on what ideas get passed around. Like, here's an interesting little anecdote, right? Like, as an example, Randolph Hearst and two other oligarchs of his day, they bought up all the newspapers. They literally bought all the newspapers in America, decided what stories they would run, and they installed their own president that way. So to say that the media has no effect, I think, or not that much effect, I don't think that's quite accurate.
Let me point to you the counterpoint being modern pop culture in music, and in many ways also in other forms of art, be it in movie, in theater. It's very American, and it is a certain type of American. It's not the American of Broadway, it's not the American of newspaper editing rooms or of high halls in academia. Modern culture developed out of cotton fields and the swamps of Mississippi from the music that was played there. And that culture developed independently from the massive media landscape of America, and it still conquered it. It is the culture is not created through media. Media is merely a medium that transports culture.
To a degree, yes. But I would say that, especially when it comes to information, right? The way we get information, media is very important to the way we get information. It might not, like, I'm not going to watch, it doesn't affect the culture in the way that some people have suggested, where, I watch a, movie and now all of a sudden I'm, a more violent person.
Just a question. Maybe we should distinguish, because I've been trying to wrap my head around, do you mean news media or entertainment and arts media, or both?
Both can have an effect.
I would try to look at them separately, honestly.
Both can have an effect, because I know quite a few people who literally get their history lessons from, movies that are quote unquote based on a true story.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, actually, point on that, because you brought it just up, and that's where it could shape people's perception. Something I found a bit disgusting, that one Jack Ryan or something with that interpretation on the whole thing of Venezuela, right-wing populist government. Really? Too afraid to call a duck a duck?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So you may not be entirely off on that. There certainly is an attempt of feeling like that is just blatant, right? Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That is on the level, like that is like just blatant propaganda. And if you look at it if you look at it in games, just look at the fucking new Call of Duty. Like, come come on, like the Russians were always the op for, but that one's a bit fucking cheeky.
I wanted to add something to some. So I just distorted the audio quality of the recording a bit by refreshing my video. I didn't know why I fucking.
That shit happens.
Yeah, but I just when I mentioned earlier the presenting of alternative perspectives that I wanted to put out there, alternative interpretations of the world and how things came to be. I wanted to also reiterate that I'm not just doing this to undermine, or not necessarily undermine the Marxist analysis, but show people that it's not the only thing you can do, right? The only thing you can use to lead to conclusions. I want to underline that I'm also doing this to undermine the right-wing populist positions that are out there.
Oh yeah.
This is one.
More than anything.
This is something where we really fucking lost it. I think that is actually one of the biggest fucking things where we lost the argument, that we just sidelined and blinded ourselves entirely to how, for example, Stefan Molyneux was basically just repopularizing ideas of racial segregation.
Oh God, that guy.
Yeah, no, we completely blinded ourselves to that.
Yeah.
We ignored it.
Yeah,
And when the few who did notice it and called it out got fucked for it.
Oh yeah. Although I think there also is a problem here. There is genuinely a problem in some of these areas, because let's take one of the favorite memes of you, right? Let's do 13-50, right? Let's take that whole thing, because and I'm hoping, this is actually where I'm having a bit of hopes for the new left wing. I think these people would be qualified to actually talk about this, because why? Because actually, if you really look at the numbers and look at the underlying and just have a basic understanding of social sciences, yeah, dipshit, 13-50, that's your proof of institutional racism. in a way.
Yeah, in that perspective.
Because of how if you combine it with the war on drugs, if you simply look at what these people don't understand is when I've seen this from people who don't even see themselves as alt-right, who are like, oh yeah, so Bloomberg is quote unquote based. But you remember when Bloomberg said this thing about oh yeah, what you basically do is you just stop and frisk so people don't carry guns. And then he was like, oh yeah, and then they complain about they're arresting all the black kids from Mariana. He's like, yeah, that's not what it's about. But the problem is that is what it is about, because this over-policing in combination with the war on drugs ends up basically locking up almost an entire generation of young black men.
I'm going to spoil an upcoming video now for you. Partially at least, the Mexico video I'm working on is a perfect example, I think, where I'm going to do that. Use alternative explanation models to explain what's going on.
Explain what's going on where.
Well, for Mexican-American migration of the drug war.
Oh, Mexican-American.
Yeah, it's going to be too.
I was looking at the African-American stuff, because I think there was a genuine problem back when you had the other SJWs.
What I wanted to say was, I am in that video going to use alternative explanation models to show how the right-wing theories are wrong. Like there's some very blatant things that need to point out. Like I really want to point out to people how much the wall is a lie, and just show
planes exist.
No, just
and tourist visas.
Well, now here's the thing: the border between the United States and Mexico is twice as long as the Iron Curtain. It goes through deserts and mountain ranges, and what a lot of people consistently ignore is it is literally physically impossible to police a border that long, extensive, going through such large stretches of unpopulated land. It's literally physically impossible.
Sense. But people don't care because the wall is symbolic for them.
And point out other things. For example, I found this really interesting crime statistic, which really blew my mind when I saw it. That most victims of armed robberies and theft in California, Arizona, New Mexico, etc., are migrants.
Yeah.
Because they come to the United States illegally and work, right? But because they're illegal, and earning money that they're trying to
they can't get a bank account and stuff.
Exactly.
Right?
So they're keeping cash on them. And biker gangs and other gangs notice that, so they now switch to robbing illegals because they mostly hold large amounts of cash on them.
And it's also harder for them to get the police involved and all that stuff.
And these kind of
it always hits the weakest in society.
Showing how these kinds of things tie into each other and create something. Yeah. That's what I want to do.
And also when it comes to picking up back on that crime stuff, right? Because who are, for example, when the right wingers meme the 13 to 50 stuff, who are the victims, by the way? Like it's just broken down communities, and the government and this is
can you keep the conversation going? I'm going to get myself a little snack. I'll be right back.
Okay. I need a break too. So god. But I'll wait for you to come back. What was I? So I think there is I lost my. Okay, trying to pick this back up. I think there is something to be said for the inability of the crazy SJWs, I want to call them, back then, not being the kind of people where you could have had intelligent conversations about problems that minority community faced with. I think that didn't help. And a lot of the one of the current issues that worries me a bit, maybe it shouldn't worry me because I'm not the affected demographic, but whatever. When you look at the trans rights right now, if you look at children transitioning, that's going to get really ugly within the next 10 to 20 years. That is going to be, oh boy. Because what literally is happening, and it is so comical that people can't see this problem, right? And it is, let me start this by saying that it's really important to make sure that adults, right, or maybe even younger than that, like there's a conversation we had about this, and making sure that the people who need to transition can transition. But the problem is, when the majority of people of children who exhibit gender non-conforming behaviors simply turn out to be gay or lesbian, and you transition them early, you're literally doing what is it Pakistan or Iran who basically forced transitions all the gays, and that's sort of
it's interesting. I was reading this.
That shit is happening, and that could break, and I really hope it doesn't happen because it's going to cause so much suffering but that could break the LGBT community, because if the T literally ends up forced almost because it's brainwashing conversion almost, when it comes to these children, some of them young boys and girls, on the girls side especially, some of them simply autistic, so they don't really understand this already is a problem with self-image, and then they end up transitioning these children, and it just statistically speaking, it cannot be the optimal choice for so many of them. And some lucky few probably go. Oh, sorry. I was
reading an interesting study on that. You got your information a little off. What it is they did a study, and children who identify as transgender, of the vast majority of them, when they reach puberty, simply identify as homosexual.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, a very small percentage of them still identify as transgender.
Yes, so that's important. Yeah,
right. And they're also showing that the vast majority of those who continue to identify as transgender once they reach puberty will continue identifying as transgender for the rest of their life. I just wanted to completely.
Oh no, yeah, that's clear. There's a couple. Oh no, so yeah, no. What I was saying is the problem here is for those people, right, who continue to identify as transgender, it's probably a blessing that they are able to transition early, or at least I hope so. It is, right? For the others, which unfortunately end up being the majority, oh boy. And I can see the argument because you're working against biology, right? And if you can modify the human body much better before puberty, but then there is the question of how much is a child really able to make this decision?
I should tell you that I have absolutely no clue about this topic. I have on purpose avoided it.
I think it's gonna be one of the really big topics that's gonna have to be talked about, especially in the lefty YouTube will also have to face at some point, because it literally is literally you could interpret it as the T eating BLG. And that would be really, really bad. Because that could shatter the entire community.
I don't understand the T eating the
trans. Okay, so here's the problem. So we were gone while we went over this. Here's the problem. So you have a certain subset of children that display, let's call it gender non-conforming behavior, right? And some of them have issues with their gender identity. And of these children, when they reach puberty, as far as the studies both Ansgar and I have seen, majority of these children end up simply being gay or lesbian, right? Majority.
Really?
A minority of them, yes, a minority of them, right? So a minority of them, but they are still there. Let me make that clear. Continues to identify as transsexual and will continue this through their lives, and will, if they haven't had if they hadn't transitioned before, will seek to transition after puberty. For these children, right, it makes sense. So let me, because I want to steel man this. So there is certainly a subset, right, for who it makes sense to transition them early because you're skipping puberty. And then you obviously have ethical concerns. Okay, but can a child make that decision? But the reason you're trying to get to this early is because, well, you're skipping. You don't have the problem of puberty. However, going back to the fact that the majority, right, not 50-50, majority, I'm not sure what, I think, was it 70% or 80%? I don't know what the number was, but I'm pretty sure it was more than 60%.
It was much larger than that.
Much larger?
Yeah, the vast
80 plus?
Oh yeah. The vast majority end up simply identifying as homosexual, and if they are transition, they end up regretting the transition, at least medically. And then a very small minority, and when you're talking about a small minority, you can have a very small minority, but when you're talking about a huge population,
yes, there are thousands of these people. Yeah,
exactly. They end up, not only are they going to continue identifying as transgender, they in almost all cases for the rest of their life they are happy having been transitioned.
Yeah.
And so this is why puberty blockers are used. The idea is that you stop their body from going through puberty, but you allow them to reach the age of puberty, so that if they're still identifying as trans, you are very, very guaranteed. This is the thought process, that decision is a good one. But the concern that some people have raised is the chemical process of puberty. Is that biological process part of the decision-making process?
I have to, in all honesty, tell you, I know nothing about this topic.
Mm-hmm.
I
can't. If you want to continue this conversation, I have to leave it.
No, we're almost done with this because I think you'll understand what the problem is we're trying to get at is. So you have this. So the measures make sense when you look at the. From a certain perspective, they make sense when you look at the people who it's supposed to serve. But when you then look at, these people may actually be a majority, and you're overdiagnosing children, right? And whenever you and then you start, and it doesn't even matter how many, like how many wrongfully transitioned, like it's almost like with wrongful convictions, right? Obviously, not mean trans people are criminal, but you know what I mean. This is such a severe thing you're doing. Right, if for 10 children you rightfully transition, you wrongfully transition one, that sucks already. That's already pretty bad. But if you look at the numbers, and if you look at how much this is happening and how much this is honestly just also a trend in culture, and there are also people who are ideologically behind it for reasons other than simply wanting the best for people with gender dysphoria, for trans people, because they see it as some way of undermining the gender binary in total. I don't know. If you look at it this way, and you then just look at the numbers of the vast majority of children displaying this gender non-conforming behavior or identifying as transsexual, if you combine that with the existence of, what is it, rapid onset gender dysphoria, this one diagnosis, which is pretty new, so I'm not sure how much of it, because this could literally just be, it's called peer pressure, people. Or some of these correlations. So the trans activist, but I'm not sure she wasn't. She couldn't have been transitioned because she, had a biological child. But so you have one of those definitely activists, and her son turns out to be trans. What are the odds of that? And maybe it is. Maybe that kid got really, really, really lucky, right? Hopefully, it's just the trans kid with supporting environment.
Maybe it's the other way around, that person is an activist because her son is trans.
That could too be the case. Yeah, that could too be the case. Maybe, right? But if you look at if you look at the numbers, and if you look at the odds of
other numbers, I need to see them, to be honest. To make conclusions, I need to see them. But it's also
let's try to pull those up at some point. We'll send those to you.
It's also one of these topics that I've just I gotta be honest with you. The reason why I'm avoiding first off, the interactions that I had with trans rights so far in my life have been limited to the fact that I went to night school with a trans woman, and that I know what the homicide rate is. And that homicide rate is fucking terrifying.
Yeah, it is absolutely terrifying.
That's my limitation to it. And the problem I also have, and this might be a little bit of the paranoia resulting out of what happened 2 years ago, I am doubly skeptical now, really highly suspicious of any crime statistics or anything like that is thrown into my direction, or statistics of any sort involving people, social studies in general. I avoid them.
Certainly you have to be always skeptical of these social studies. But the possibility, right? It's this issue, right? And I'm just going to call there's the possibility of this being the issue. I'm not, because I simply don't know how well the data is going to hold up. That in service, right, in the noble aim of helping trans children transition early, children who are simply just gonna be gay or lesbian end up being transitioned and end up suffering for it. And the problem is that is going to be that you need to have a very nuanced conversation for this. But within the LGBT community, there are elements who are not interested in having it. And I'm not sure how well the left-wingers on YouTube are going to be able to have this conversation. I hope they can have this.
I would say that they almost can't. I mean, look what happened when Rationality Rules did his video and the fallout from that. I mean, it destroyed entire communities.
That's what I'm worried about, right? Like, I'm worried that this is the one niche where they still have the crazies remaining.
That's why that's probably just, I gotta be honest, that's more reason for me to avoid it.
Yeah, I know that's more reason for you to avoid it.
It's also more reason for gotta be honest, for any potential new liberal. Like I said, the main thing to me is, like, right now, not getting involved in any such fucking paradigm, any such conflict between two unchangeable blocks of positions.
Yeah.
But present alternative explanation models for why the world is as it is, reasoned, researched, well backed up with facts. That to put it bluntly, get the fuck out of the culture war for the time being.
Yeah, no, makes sense. The reason I brought this up is that you've seen all. I don't have to talk to you about nastiness in the culture war, right? But this last particular example, right, this issue that's being underexplored has the potential for like a massive number of victims.
Yeah,
and completely innocent. So that's why it's more. I was using this more of an example of that these issues still exist.
You have to understand that the things that I've seen of it, is people, for example. Let me just bring this let me just say it very frankly. What the fuck was accomplished by consistently and repeatedly calling Riley Day Jennings a man over the course of several years? What the fuck was accomplished by
nothing? Nothing good.
Nothing. And it is exactly that kind of behavior that I am scared of falling back into.
Agree. However, Riley, I think, did put out there some very abusive ideas.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I agree with Kraut here. That doesn't matter.
What the fuck is the point of that?
No, I don't think he. I'm not saying she. I think Riley goes by both he and she.
I don't care whatever it is, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean, though. What the fuck is accomplished by picking some random, by doing petty shit?
Well, not random.
Hold on, let me doing petty shit like that. Hold on. One of there have been a few ideas that Riley has, right, that have become quite popular among trans activists.
Like the one thing that I like, you don't need to tell me about this. The one fight, it wasn't really a fight because she didn't fight back, but the one confrontation I had with her was when she was praising trans rights in Iran.
Oh yeah, that's actually I was talking about that while you were.
That was infuriating.
Here's my
but
big
but
one.
The thing is,
I mean, that was...
wait. Let me finish this point because it is an important one. I made not a response video to Riley per se. I made a video about gay, lesbian, and trans rights in the Islamic world, pointing out the fact that in Iran, gender transition is not a medical procedure per se. It is a punishment for being gay or being lesbian, right? Because that's what it is in Iran. And I made some really good points in that video. I detailed everything, but I ruined the entire video. I ruined the entire fucking video by calling Riley Day Jennings a man. Ruined it. Gotta be honest about this. Because now I now have a normie audience that went back to watching that video, and I clipped that part out retrospectively because I realized that a lot of these normal people who came in, they immediately realized that this was just petty shit. When like the entire arguments that I made, right, worthless just because of one little petty stupid thing that I did. There were like comments, why are you doing this petty shit? Why are you doing this? You know, that's the thing that I'm scared of in this conversation that we are having right now.
That this would happen once the conversation starts.
I don't want this stuff to happen. I genuinely believed that this shit, like, it may have started with them doing this, not necessarily.
It doesn't matter.
Jennings, but some of, like, go back years back and you will find the petty nasty videos they made, and then you find the petty nasty videos that we made. And I do not want that to reoccur. I really don't want that to happen again.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's why I am, before we can even have a conversation about that, and that's something that I initially, when I said that the response video format was so negative for us, before we can even have such a conversation, we need to establish a baseline and fundamental rules for how such conversations, how such back and forths over the internet are supposed to go and can go and will go and whatever. Because if you don't have these basic rules and conditions or standards for yourself, we end up in this petty bullshit fighting again. And I don't want that. The pettiness ruins you. It is actually negative for you. When you present your case in a petty, nasty way, people notice that.
So now I'll try to actually make the point I was trying to make. I agree that Riley Dennis shouldn't have been treated the way Riley Dennis was treated. That's not what I was defending in any way, shape, or form. And had I finished my sentence, I could have gotten that out. What I'm saying though is it was very important to respond to Riley Dennis. Maybe not in a response video format. I don't think that was the proper format. But unfortunately, there's a very, I think, abusive idea that has been put out into the culture, particularly in a very vocal community of the trans rights culture, that basically says if you don't date it, if basically it's like if you wouldn't date a trans person, you are a bigot, you are transphobic. And the reason I find this very toxic is it is like if you told me that you didn't want to date somebody for any attribute, doesn't matter what that attribute was, you didn't find it attractive, you don't want to date that person, me trying to socially manipulate you and peer pressure you or badger you into dating that person, that's kind of rapey.
It sounds like sexual coercion. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
it is.
And
so that
and you should and if you think it sounds like sexual coercion, you should make the case for that. You should make the case for
exactly.
Okay, this is what is what's wrong. The point I was making is, like I said before, you accomplish nothing by calling a trans woman a man.
I agree. We're all in agreement about this.
You look like a fucking idiot. Frankly,
completely.
You look like a bigot. Simple as that. And
in fact, I think I don't know, but I'd have to look it up. But I think Riley goes by both male and female pronouns. I think Riley identifies as like gender fluid or something.
The point I was getting to is the conversation, as far as I've noticed it, around this topic is so toxic.
It's a fucking minefield.
It's so toxic. I don't want to get involved in that. I don't want to.
Oh yeah, you should. I'm not saying. I was never saying. I was never advocating you should get involved. I was bringing this up as an example of some lingering in left YouTube, and where the one area where they have spilled the crazy.
The YouTube sphere that we had a big problem with it. Probably was people who deliberately sought out and jumped into minefields. Sort out the confrontation, sort out the pettiness, sort out the nastiness, sort out trying to be as provocative as possible, rather than making any kind of actual point. That's probably one of the biggest things that contributed to her downfall.
Although I think when all is said and done, right, 1 or 2 years down the line, someone will need to have this conversation, right? And I hope it's going to be just. I really hope that the left wingers just sort this out among themselves. That would be nice.
Every conversation always has to be had, technically.
At some point.
At some point, every conversation has to be had, but at the time being, if we are even going to rebuild any kind of liberal sphere of YouTube, we should avoid anything that's nasty.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Anything, any pettiness, like abandon the edgelord persona, maybe even.
Grow the fuck up. Pretty much, basically, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing: I hate that the term "edgy" has been co-opted by racists and fuckwits. I mean, edgy, that's not what edgy ever was supposed to mean. It was just somebody who pushed social boundaries and shit like that. I mean, if anything, fucking like trans activists and LGBT activists are edgy.
I just want to calmly make a case. Calmly articulate something that I want people to know. Now, avoid. I'm not, and for like I mentioned earlier that I don't want to use the term SJW anymore. I'm going to make the effort to try to purge any kind of vocabulary that could be interpreted as a slur out of my videos. We'll be a bit tougher on Twitter because I'm still a spurg. I'm probably not going to hold on to any new Twitter account for long, but we should try to, you know, what the community was called the rational skeptics, and then barely anyone noticed how the rational part just faded away into nothing. Nobody called it the rational skeptics anymore after a while, just the skeptics. The rational part faded away. That rationality needs to be reclaimed. It really does, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything more to say, or do you think I can put this on the channel yet, or is there anything else that we need to talk through?
No, you can put whatever I say on the channel. I really don't speak, and I don't say things to people
we
that
have to
I
have
wouldn't.
several conversations like this, I believe, about the future of what we're gonna do. If we are going to do anything at all, that's the thing.
I was gone, by the way, for a moment. I hope I didn't miss anything.
No. What I pointed out was, do you remember I just called you skeptic. Sorry, sarcastic. How this community used to be called the rational skeptics, and then over the course of a few years, the rational parts faded away, and people just the skeptics.
Yes, I actually still remember that. Yeah.
The rational part must be reclaimed.
God, that was back when I got into atheist YouTube. That was way back when. Holy shit. Oh yeah, memories. Hang on, how far back does that go? I need to go through this at some point. I need to actually figure out when I started watching.
When you scroll through old Thunderfoot videos, you just realize the split that took place.
Yeah.
Like there is this one moment when the SJWs became a thing. It's that one moment, and you can see it when you scroll down through those old videos. It's like almost 10 years ago. It's literally 10 years ago now. Literally.
Eventually it would be interesting. By eventually I mean probably decades after. Eventually it would be interesting to at least try to figure out where the fuck this all came from. Like, what did we do wrong as a civilization to get into this fucking mess?
There is something that I wanted to talk to you about when you mentioned self-policing.
When I mentions what?
You mentioned self-policing in a communal sense. I talked about self-policing in a personal sense. That you should first and foremost not police others but yourself.
That's a good point.
But I will make this point. I will not associate with anyone anymore who sided with the alt-right in any way in the last 2 years.
Yep, that's fair.
I consider my drama to have been the moment where people in that sphere of YouTube had the choice. They could either side with the alt-right or not. And if you made a decision back then, that was your decision. I don't think you can reverse it now.
I don't know, man.
I'm not sure.
Well, the reason
I wouldn't
ask
you
the reason why, Ansgar, is now it is popular to make videos against the alt-right. Back then it wasn't.
Yeah.
And one of the first things that happened when my channel recovered was a flood of people in my DMs going, "Oh, I'm sorry I threw you under the bus back then. Deep down I was always on your side." And it's just
sending thoughts and prayers, I guess.
Yeah.
I do think that there's a case for forgiveness, and I do think that there's a case for allowing.
No. As the Russian proverb goes, those destined to hang will not drown. Which might be a little bit dark.
I do think there's a case for people learning and people growing and people changing.
I think
I think it's very
terrible. I think a lot of the people in that sphere of YouTube that we were active in were not really guided by principle or belief, but by clicks and views. And it's not that I don't want anything to do with these people anymore, because I'm not going to name names. I'm not even going to talk about them anymore at all, or mention them by name. I'm just going to avoid them, not talk about them. Because I think if you sided with the alt-right in the last 2 years, it's pretty clear that you did it for clicks and views. And I honestly find the people who do shit for clicks and views in the political YouTube sphere worse than the actual fanatics. Because the fanatics at least believe in
I've
something.
seen quite a few people get absorbed into this way of thinking and absorbed into this kind of shit for honest reasons, not for clicks and views. So I've seen both sides of it, which is why I wouldn't write anyone off. I wouldn't. How about this? I wouldn't say anyone. I wouldn't write someone off necessarily. Write someone off completely just because they took an ideological side. You know what I mean?
Maybe you can convince me otherwise in a future conversation.
I think this would be very much a future conversation. I don't think.
To be honest, maybe I'm just being a petty bitch right now.
No, you're not. I think you're not. I think for the moment, for probably even the next year or years, you are completely right in this assessment. And I think especially when it comes to building something new, you need nobody who wasn't willing to stand up back then.
Yes.
These people maybe can, like, if things change, right? If let's say this actually succeeds, right? And if things shift, who knows where the world is in 5 years or so? And if then people want to come back, then maybe, right? People change, but not now.
There's also a conversation about if something should even be rebuilt.
So if something should, what?
If we should even rebuild it. Maybe.
Oh yeah, that conversation is out yet.
Even there might be there's a case to be made, to be honest, which a kind of left-wing friend of mine made to me actually, which is maybe the lesson to be learned out of it is that there shouldn't be such a thing as political online communities. That people should just individually present their cases.
It's more what I do. I think if we're going to build anything, it should just be a social group of people who, share ideas and talk, not necessarily how should I put it, like a political label or something like that. You know what I mean?
You both probably noticed by now that my biggest fear, is falling into any kind of behavioral pattern over the course of the last 5 that we had over the course of the last 5 years, because I now consider almost I've looked back on everything that happened over the past 5 years with a very cynical eye, and I'm very, very cynical of any approach to making videos or to arguing that we made back then. I see almost all of it as having been done the completely wrong way.
That may be a bit harsh, but yeah, I find it hard to entirely disagree with you there.
So
I'm just skeptical about how much better it could have been done, really.
If something is built newly, it has to be done completely newly. It has to be something new, something different. That's what I'm trying to do right now on my main channel. Not sure if it's going to work, but
I think it is working already, so
we'll see. We'll
see. Well, what do you mean we'll see? Have you looked at your numbers?
I have a significant amount of communist viewers who don't, I brought up to you previously, the downside of making objective presentations of facts is that anyone can interpret them. And I have a significant amount of very far left viewers who watch the objectively presented. I have to say I try to be objective, because I don't think I completely am, and make their own interpretations of them. Said, this validates our Marxist beliefs in this and this section. That's a danger that comes with making objective presentations of facts. You open the gateway for people to come in, and just that's by the way something I observed that we did very wrong back in 2016 and 2017. Like, for example, throwing out sex crime statistics on Muslim immigrants.
Oh yeah.
We threw those out, but what we failed to do is explain why this happened. And why, for example, that you're basically dealing with generations of sexually frustrated men who are raised in Islamic schools to hate women, who are circumcised in a way that makes that inhibits them from experiencing sexual pleasure, which, by the way, is true. In Arab countries, they do the full circumcision, which is far more invasive than the circumcision done in the United States. Which basically...
No, this is not a topic I'm familiar with.
I can give you the full insight on this at some point, but yeah.
Yeah, at some point.
Point out from that, for example, that there is a proven correlation psychologically and also criminology between impotence and lack of sexual gratification and sex crime, that people who are impotent tend to lash out against women. Like these kinds of intricate explanations for why things happen as they are. Instead, what we did was throw out crime statistics, and because we threw
and then anyone could interpret it in any way.
Exactly, and guess which people came in to interpret them.
Yep. Although, one thing I want to say, and you can disagree with me on that, I think one thing we just have to acknowledge, like the whole mass immigration thing and the failure of integration simply is a massive fuck up. Right? Like, I think people wouldn't be people if you wouldn't see some reaction and some right-wing reaction to that.
The way we did it was so bad, because the thing is, people now believe that I am fundamentally anti-immigration, which is not the case. I myself am a fucking migrant. Like, I thought I made the case very clearly when I showed my crime
statistics. You did?
Back then, and I said,
oh, look, but people didn't listen.
Well, I didn't say back then when I presented them that, look, Chinese migrants, Indian migrants, Ghanaian and Nigerian migrants on average commit less crime than Arab migrants. And even the native Germans, they're more likely to open a business than native Germans. They work hard, etc., etc. I failed to point that out. I failed in that regard. I just threw out, look at how bad the Muslims are, basically.
Yeah, I think you, yeah. You weren't the only one, and again, I think it would have required monumental effort, and I think people literally would have just had to be better.
I watched one of Sargon's talks recently, a month ago something, and all.
Oh, you mean that stand-up thing with hate facts?
Yes,
that is stupid.
So stupid.
Yeah. In this day and age, this is
because what he thinks he's doing,
it's just fuel on the fire. I know.
He thinks he's kickstarting a conversation, but he's not.
Yeah, I know.
He's just inviting.
That is not how you. Yeah, he's just inviting. Yeah.
That's the big mistake that we all made for years, or at least I made.
Dude, it's a mistake that I can talk I'm mostly talking from the perspective of a viewer, right? Like it's a mistake that I almost fell into ultimately, when it comes to just how you interpret these things, right? And I was smart enough to interpret.
There's an entire subsection. There's an entire section of people out there who now believe that black people are racially inferior subhumans.
Yeah.
Who believe that is a scientific fact. And as much as I tried to work against that belief, I feel that the community that I was part of substantially contributed to that happening. Substantially helped that belief spread. And it sucks. To be fair, I didn't make videos on the race issue that much. Like I made videos.
You didn't, I know.
I made videos on Islam, but I never talked about. Frankly, I don't know much about African American culture. Like most black people I've known in my life are Germans.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I know one or two myself, but do you have? I've had this phenomenon of noticing how particularly German, especially the second generation.
Well, that's something that is really weird to me. I dated the daughter of Ghanaian immigrants when I moved out of my parents' place, and it just shows you how, this is another problem with the left, actually, that at some point we have to point out how American-centric it is. Because I remember a conversation I had with her, and I considered that to be, weirdly enough, the most racist thing I've ever done in my life, right? There was some news story about, you might remember this, when Hamburg appointed its first black senator.
I didn't. I missed that completely.
And there was a weird scandal that came out of that because I think he forged his doctor's thesis or something. Or some bullshit.
Oh, that's so German of him.
Yeah, that's actually very German.
He would fit well in with German ability.
I remember that story because I was dating her at the time, and I remember asking her in a conversation, how do you as a black woman feel about that? Not phrased like that, but I remember asking her that, and I got a really angry, stone cold stare down, and she said, "Ich bin Deutsche." And and that's something
that makes
that's exactly calling a black, like, if you look at American culture, that's the weird thing to us, I guess. Calling people black is normal there. Like calling a black person, calling a black person here.
Yeah. Real big.
Yeah. You don't do that.
And there is this and there is this, and as you just said, ich bin Deutsche. It's self-evident, right?
Yeah, it is.
Well, here's the thing: we have. I can explain some of this. In the United States, we have a history of. First, there was segregation, right?
Before that, there was slavery.
Yeah, no. We are aware of this. The thing is, Americans are not aware that there are places in the world that are not America.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Dude, everyone online, here's the thing, everyone online basically treats their local culture as though it should be the standard for all cultures everywhere.
I don't.
I disagree.
I don't. I frankly don't. Most Europeans don't, because most Europeans by now are fully aware of foreign cultures because we live surrounded by them.
Constantly. And I think,
how about this? Certainly activists, because when you talk to the activists, they'll say, this word, is offensive for this reason. No one should use it. It's like, you are not even remotely.
Okay. I should correct myself. French people, and I think Sarcastic knows that, French people certainly do behave like everyone else should be French. That's definitely the case.
We did it. Well, this wouldn't be very German if we didn't shit on the French at least.
No, it's not shitting. It's a fact. French people.
I know it is a fact.
French people behave like everyone should be French.
And I think it's part of it is like, this is tied to a strength of the French. Like, if you look at the French and integrating, right? Like, this is where this helps them, right? But at the same time, it's just a fact that the French think people should be like them. But here's the difference between the French and the Americans. The French are very aware that other people aren't like them.
True.
So
that's should be like them.
The French are like, oh, people are not like us, but they should be. And the Americans are like, what do you mean? Everyone's like that.
Yeah.
So, and they're not entirely wrong, because we did adopt a lot of American culture, and the entire world did. Let's not discount that.
Do you know what a bin bim is?
No, I don't actually.
It's a kind of West African lingerie. It's a sex thing. I have to Google it and show you a picture. And I fucking
okay. How did we end up? I think this conversation got derailed.
They are beads of pearls.
They
are beads of pearls. They are beads of pearls that in West Africa women wear beneath their underwear, and they rattle them when around men, or they're supposed to be pulled in bed, etc., etc. And there's a funny thing about that, because my ex used to wear them, right? And she always used to laugh her ass off at the fact that American professors of African American studies would wear them as necklaces. That's...
Oh my god, that is priceless. That is amazing. That is genuinely amazing.
So
that's a good way to conclude this.
I wanted to finish a quick point before I gotta go. I see a lot of people though act as though, and it's not just America. I see people from Britain do the same thing. You know, I see people from all over the world do this, where they'll make a statement, and they're making a statement to the world of this is the way things are, or this is why this is bad, or something like that, without even possibly considering cultures and countercultures and things like that, where the context behind, let's say, a word or a cultural attitude or the way of doing things is entirely different. To give an example, you know, I've been an LGBT activist all my life. I've literally been in cuffs fighting for gay rights, to give you an idea. I've lived most of my life in Hollywood. You know, I'm bisexual. Most of my buddies are growing up were gay or lesbian, and in that subculture, right? For instance, the word fag was thrown around all the time. That's just how we talk. It was no different than you saying bro, or dude, or something like that. And then somebody comes up and says, okay, this word is a slur and this is what it means, and no one should use it. It's like, that might be true for where you live. That might be true for the local culture of your area. But I can tell you that those cultural, what is appropriate and what is contextual, what these words mean contextually, can change radically just from one zip code to a next here in America. Forget just going around the world. I mean, you can walk 3 blocks and the context of a word has completely changed.
Yeah.
Okay, since all of you don't want to continue anymore, and
I have like 5 or 10 more minutes, but I think it's a good way to call it, right?
We're going to have more conversations like this, I believe. I'm just going to say in the end to anyone, there's not going to be much people watching this, but to anyone who wants to join the conversation, just DM me on Discord and we'll see what we can do. Is there anything?
Hey, look at me, I'm not even a content creator. I'm just I just moderate crowds Discord. That's all I do.
Is there anything you want to say as a final word, Sarkeesian?
No, just that was kind of my final word. Like, it's really easy to get into this, people, if you actually if you're interested in joining. Okay. So that's all.
Then have a good night, everyone.
Yeah, good night.